The average length of immigration detention is increasing. The average is now 350 days. The department says 659 children remain in detention, but has made significant progress in moving children out of that situation, and says a huge influx of people who arrived under the previous government must be taken into account. We'll bring you some reaction from the department head, Martin Bowles, in the next half an hour. But joining me on my panel to discuss this is Green Senator Larissa Waters and National Senator here with me in the studio, Bridget McKenzie. Bridget McKenzie, first to you. There is a need for secrecy, which I think a lot of people understand, but I think on the flip side, a lot of people would be uncomfortable with what we are hearing about out of this inquiry today. Would you agree?
Well, I think it's paramount on all of us to ensure that children in our care are protected, and I know the government takes that very, very seriously. But the reality is that 2,000 children under the previous government in July last year were in detention, and so if we can actually go about implementing our policies of stopping the boats, that is less children that will be in detention and less children that will be experiencing these issues. We've seen a 35% decrease in the number of children in detention as a result of our government's policy, and that's got to be a good thing.
Larissa Waters, what's your response to this inquiry today? Of course, the situation has improved in the last year. It's still not great, but there are improvements.
Look, I think any amount of children in detention is a national shame. And the notion that you need to be detaining children at all because they might be some kind of security risk is just ridiculous. They're children. We don't support locking up kids or anyone seeking asylum for that matter. We want a short period in which those claims can be processed and then release those people into the community where they want to become contributing members of our society and where they can lead a safe life.
I just want to move on to some other areas as well. We've seen today a proposal from Twiggy Forrest, which is quite radical in some areas. Bridget McKenzie, what do you think about this proposal about, I guess, expanding the basics card, really?
Well, I haven't seen the report. I've read the article that refers to the report, and I think the report's being released. It's sitting with government at the moment. But it does go to the heart of income management, and currently we have 24,000 Australians on income management. It's a voluntary system. Additionally, any Australian can actually be part of the scheme, and we see it as a really positive. Well, the government has already committed $100 million to expand the program to Sejuna for 12 months in South Australia, because at the end of the day this is about outcomes and ensuring that particularly women and children in vulnerable families can actually ensure that there is food on the table going forward, and that they can actually ensure their kids have shoes to go with school and the basic requirements, and I think that's a fabulous outcome.
And Larissa Waters, what do you think about extending this not only to other areas but extending it to areas in which this money can be used? I think Twiggy Forrest was suggesting in part that perhaps there isn't any disposable income. Is that something you would be open to?
Oh, look, absolutely not. I think this proposal is verging on farcical. The notion that you can somehow empower people to manage their finances by taking away their control of their finances, it's just silly. And I hope the government rejects Andrew Forrest's report. Extending out income management, which hasn't worked so far, to apply to almost anyone on a welfare payment is simply going to entrench and disempower people. It's not going to give people the financial tools to manage their finances properly. It's going to disempower them, and I hope that this silly proposal is just rejected outright.
I want to quickly look at the mining tax. This is something, of course, Larissa Waters, the government does want to repeal, along with a lot of the spending measures. Now, the mining tax hasn't worked. I know a profits-based tax is something that the Greens did want, but they wanted vastly expanded. But whilst we're in this stalemate, we shouldn't be spending on programs that aren't actually paid for, should we?
Well, that's precisely why we've suggested improving the mining tax so that it can actually start raising significant revenue rather than simply scrapping it all together as the government wants to do and is facing significant resistance from the Greens and others in the Senate who actually think that not only should we be raising revenue but that important things like that low-income super contribution, which will predominantly affect women, needs to be kept. So again, I think it's a very strange approach to say, well, something's not working, let's get rid of it, rather than let's fix it so that it can raise revenue. If we're in a budget crisis, surely the government should be open to revenue-raising measures.
Bridget McKenzie, your response?
Well, I think it's a bit rich of the Greens to come before us and seeking to make these sort of changes. They were basically in government for 3 years. They could have sought to make those changes and use their numbers effectively within that partnership. They made other choices. We were really clear with what we were going to take to the Australian people, and Senator Waters can say what she likes, but at the end of the day, the Australian people made it very clear that they wanted to get rid of the mining tax. And so when we look at some of the spending measures that are going to be impacted, for instance, the school kids bonus, we made it very clear that we were getting rid of that. At the end of the day, the changes the Labor government made to that particular payment meant basically it's a lump of money going into people's bank account. There is no requirement for families to spend it on things educational issues, and I think that means we're basically just writing blank cheques, and the savings that we need to get our budget back on track to address the $1 billion in interest we're paying every month that we can spend on effective measures out there in community can't be done while this is hanging around our neck.
On another note, are you comfortable with a new coal mine being approved just this week in Queensland when talking about direct action, a lower carbon economy? Why was that necessary?
Well, I come from the good state of Victoria, where the state government there has done some fabulous work about ensuring best environmental management practice alongside scientific approvals and understanding before we make any decisions about mining on our land in my home state.
Larissa Waters, there were strict environmental, not just environmental, but strict conditions all round for this.
Well, unfortunately, the Auditor General's report last month showed that those conditions simply are not enforced, and everybody knows that. And secondly, this particular company that have proposed and now been allowed to place the largest coal mine in the southern hemisphere in Queensland to ship out through the Great Barrier Reef, back in their home country of India, they've been sued for breaching similar environmental conditions. So they have a poor track record of compliance, and we now know from that report that the federal government has a poor track record of enforcement. This is a recipe for destruction of groundwater, of the reef, and of course of the climate.
All right, Bridget McKenzie, I just quickly want to ask you about the Roads to Recovery scheme. There's been calls from local governments to unlock this funding. It expired in June. There's $2 billion that local governments can't get to. What's going on?
Absolutely. Well, what's going on is more political games from the Greens and the Labor Party. I know Senator Mill made a big song and dance about the Greens being actually for regional Australia, and this is the core program. When I travel around rural and regional councils and local government,
so what's going on?
This is what they want to actually happen, and for the Greens to actually stand in the way and play political games just because Anthony Albanese wants to keep his political legacy. What we're arguing about,
it was a small amendment, wasn't it?
Well, it was amendments about keeping the name of a program and adding on duplication, etc. Because what we're doing is actually ensuring that we're entrenching the politicisation of infrastructure, and that's not something we're prepared to do. This is real money that needs to get on the ground very quickly.
Bridget McKenzie, Larissa Waters, thanks so much for joining me on Lunchtime Agenda today. A quick break, we'll be back.